How can an understanding of nationalism in the past help us make sense of today? This is the driving question, and the question that we will answer in this project. Because this is our first piece of evidence that actually helped us launch into the project and launch into answering the driving question. But how can something in the past help you answer the driving question? You need to look a little to find out.
Sorry.
In the case of the Crimean War, there's still very high tensions between religions. For example, there are very high tensions between the Muslims and Christians. A good example of this example would be the Mali War. If you'd like to know a little more about it, I've put some sources down in the description. Now for our second piece of supporting evidence. And Louis Riel. Louis Riel was a Canadian politician, a founder of the province of Manitoba. Now why is this another good example of oppression? Now why is this another good example of nationalism? This is a good example of oppression to another group that might think/look differently.
That makes no sense.
Right now, a good example of this would be Black Lives Matter.
You're mixing your stuff.
You'd know about it if you weren't living under a rock for the past few months. This is a movement where people are trying to get equal rights for the black people. Once
You're
again,
actually
if
all over
you
the
don't
board
know very much, or
in
would you
terms
like
of your
to learn
things.
more about
You're
it,
really not
there'll be some
connecting
more
what
sources
you're
down
talking
below.
about to your driving
The
question.
British North America, through Canadian Confederation, there was a lot of nationalism. One of the biggest examples of this is that without nationalism, then they probably wouldn't have ever had Confederation. What I mean by this is that without having any nationalism, they wouldn't have had as much pride for their country and been as eager to defend from the Americans.
With this, you can see how much nationalism impacted people in the past. Now, can you see how it's going to impact you in the future?
All right, so here's my kind of just summary reaction. So I know I didn't say a lot during your part, Liam, and one of the things that I found is that your portion of it, you actually you gave me some facts, you gave me some figures, and you then tied them together and said why they mattered and how it actually related to being a nation and part of a nation. So I thought that for your driving question, that was really, really good. My criticism that I would have on the other part of it was I didn't find that there was really a lot of connection between the facts and figures that were given and the question. It was like, here's a bunch of stuff about the Crimean War, here's some facts. There was things to do with religion, which actually isn't true. That was a part of it, but that wasn't the drive behind the nationalism and the nationalism question. To then segue into Louis Riel without any discussion of why Manitoba mattered or any of the other things makes it very challenging to follow what the thread of the idea is without any connection. And then to jump to the Black Lives Matter and talk about that being an oppression thing when you haven't spoken about oppression, I don't think that actually belongs with the presentation. So overall, I know that I chuckled at one point, and it was the question of what can we learn from history to help us answer the question nationalism? Well, that is the big question, and that's why history is super important, is because if we don't learn from it, we can repeat the negative parts of it. So anyhow, all in all, I think that there could have maybe been some better editing and maybe better really connecting the pieces together. So you probably had some really, really great stuff. I would have loved to have seen what was left maybe on the editing room floor, as it were. So anyhow, that's my reaction.